screaming, not screaming.
That's it here.
Double click on that. Okay, just give it a second. Now, we are ready to go.
How do I pull the paper on?
Huh? I'll go back. Yeah, go back. Yeah.
Yeah, good morning. This is Dr. Ngwang again, streaming from MSBC 202, TC MSBC 202 on your YouTube. If you follow your syllabus very carefully, you know this week is the research paper week. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the research paper because this is a critical part of this course. And a very critical part of education also, because I know in the other areas and higher up, nobody sits down to tell you how to write a research paper. They expect you to know how to write it. They expect you to carry out a research. And then this is the class designed and designated for teaching you how to write the research paper. The research paper, as we know, is a very time-consuming activity, and so many of our colleagues and friends and students are really scared of it because of the time-consuming aspect of it, and secondly, the fact that you have to think critically to come up with a topic and to pursue that topic to be able to come up with at least 8 typed pages of both your opinion and a collection of other research papers and information. And remember again, a research paper is not a collection of other people's opinions or ideas. Neither is it just your own ideas. It is a combination of your own critical thinking and what you have gathered from outside to write a paper that is uniquely yours. Remember again, irrespective of your level of research, the paper is not the researcher's paper or the researcher's papers, but it is your paper. It should have your voice. The ideas should be yours and therefore authentic. The other researchers come in only to support your idea or for you to argue against them. Sometimes you may set them up in order to argue against them, or they may come in to support you. So therefore, this research material does two things. Either it supports your point of view, or heightens your point of view, enlightens your point of view, or it is set up for you to argue against because you have discovered new ideas, you have found new ideas to be substantiated. And therefore, this research material, your research in the library is just a matter of trying to see how you can extend the knowledge, your knowledge of that topic or that subject, and how you can support that. Remember, the rest of the paper is just a support of that central theme. And therefore, it's just a support of the central theme. So therefore, you must have a strong hypothesis. One that has not been projected, one that has not been written about that subject. But remember, I said the research means looking again. That's true, but again, you cannot be looking at exactly the same thing in exactly the same way. So therefore, you must have a strong... You must develop a habit or habits of mind of academic writing. You must be able to think critically. What does he say? What does he imply? You know, no author goes out there saying, I'm going to write about love today. I'm going to write about death. I'm going to write about the American family. Yes, I know there are some books on American family or death and love, but when it comes to literature, most of these things or ideas are embedded in the writing, so that as you read through, or as we've been reading through the short story, the poetry or poems, and then the play, Erasing in the Sun, you begin to see a particular train of thought, a particular idea that is evolving, that is attracted to the idea. It is consuming you, and you want to investigate more. You want to look into it more. You want to isolate that idea. You want to extrapolate that idea from the rest of the text and to follow it up as a theme for what? A paper. you are attracted to that. So you must develop a critical thinking and inquiry mind, inquiring. And you want to investigate more. You can't accept everything. You have to be skeptical, analytical. You want to extrapolate. I don't think this is right. Okay, let me go look again. Let me go to the library and find more information. This is what you're doing. You must develop a critical thinking. Oh, I think I see it differently. Yeah, you're right, but I see it differently. I have something additional. Yeah, this is the 21st century. I know there was something that was very popular in the 1st century or the 19th century, 20th century, but it is no longer popular because of 1, 2, 3. Because critics have said so. And not only because critics have said so, because you, as an author, as a writer, you are convinced that what you are writing is accurate. So again, you see, I'm moving from what? The secondary sources, what critics have said, to your own mind, your own thinking. Because the paper is not just a combination of those ideas, but how you use those ideas. Remember, you use those ideas to service your own ideas. Remember the whole thing, the relationship between critical authors out there and you is that you summon them to come help you argue at a point. You don't go to help them, they're coming to help you. So critically, much of the author or much of the writing should be your own writing. It should come from you. And furthermore, you have to develop an open mind. You summon them to come help. Be able to receive things, but not to accept them. Remember, they're coming to help you. Reagan once said, you have to verify. You have to accept things, but verify them. Come from you. Trust, but verify. And be sure. You have to develop an open mind. And then you should be able to seek and value complexities. But not anyway people think, I see. I think that's another way of looking at it. I see now. I get the point. You have to verify. You have to accept things. And you have to understand the writing as a process. That with this research thing is a whole process that begins from coming up with a topic, then brainstorming first, understanding that topic. That's another way of looking at it. I see. You may not have the details on the topic. You may not have the in-depth knowledge of that topic, but you've got to understand what they're asking for, what the topic entails and requires, before you ever go out to the library to find, to look for more information. It's like going to pick up somebody from the airport. You don't just jump into your car to go and pick up a totally new stranger whom you've never known. But you've got to understand. What do? You need to do a little bit of research. Somebody probably gives you a picture or describes him, so that when you do find him in that whole crowd at the airport, you should be able to identify somebody from the airport. That's what the research paper is about. Having a preliminary knowledge in order to see where you are taking this pointer. Are you advising people? Are you just adding more information? Are you debating what has been said before? Are you undercutting what has been said before? Are you giving more weight to what has been said before? I remember, if it's just echoing what others have said before, it does not lead to a research paper. Remember, the ultimate aim of that research paper is one to contribute to the body of knowledge that does exist. What is your own contribution? You can go to the library and see a bunch of papers written about the American dream. Echoing what others have said before, your own contribution here to a research paper comes in when you add something. It may be just in the terms of a book, or the difference between how one author uses the characters and settings and how you use yours. Or the difference between what another author had written somewhere and a book you've always been reading and reading, but it never dawned on you. It never crossed your mind to know that, okay, this, I think they're also talking about the American dream, because I see the elements of the American dream. I see the attempt to progress in society, upward mobility, rising up from ashes to wealth, money, the family, progression from poverty to some kind of wealth. I see it here now clearly. I see the attempt. So you have to understand the research process. which begins with the topic before you actually get down to going to the library.
Family, progression.
As a result, you end up with so many textbooks. Many textbooks call it writing from sources. I call it writing one about those sources because you are there to evaluate each source, remember? You don't just take what each source talks or presents as gospel truth. You have to evaluate each source. You have to write about it.
You end up with so many.
You have to write with sources. You have to use some of those sources
Writing from sources
to help you in your argument.
about those sources.
And you should sometimes have to write from some sources, especially with literature.
Presents as gospel truth.
And what do I mean by writing from sources? There are two types of sources in
You have to write with sources. You have to use some of those sources.
in literature. The first source is called the primary source, which is what we are writing about,
especially with
like for instance,
And what do I mean by writing from sources?
we are writing about the American dream in Erasing in the Sun. Erasing in the Sun therefore becomes what we are primary source. And any other text you use, therefore, which is original, is your primary source. Use Death of a Salesman, Erasing in the Sun, The Great Gatsby.
We're writing about
These are texts that deals very much with the American dream. Or even the short story we just finished reading, Everyday Use, this attitude towards life, that's part of the American dream. All of them constitute what we call the primary sources.
The Great Gatsby.
We're going to talk more about that. Then the secondary sources, therefore, are
With the
text,
American dream.
essays, newspapers, magazines, CD-ROMs, interviews, every other kind of writing
American dream.
or interview that talks about the primary source, that discusses the themes, the setting, the characters, the approach, whatever is said about the primary source. So they're commenting on the primary source.
Kind of writing.
Those become what we call your secondary sources, and those are the ones, remember, I talked about you evaluating them very well.
That discusses the themes, the setting, the characters, the approach, whatever is
Sources as raw material. Research about searching again. That's why we have research. It's presenting a new perspective to old perspectives and ideas, or searching for more details on and about the same ideas, expanding the perimeters of the same ideas, or presenting a new look or approach to the same ideas.
Research about searching again. That's why
And remember,
research.
one critic said, you cannot write anything that has never been written about.
Or searching for
But the
more
point is,
details
if it has been written about, why write about it? Except in a creative work. Even in a creative work, some other person must have thought about it from a different way. But the difference here is that your approach is
One
different.
critic said, you cannot
Your
write
methodology
anything
is
that has
different.
never been written about.
Yes,
But the point is,
you are trying to
it has been
create
written
or to
about,
add
why write
something
about it?
to what has already
Except
existed.
in a creative work.
Expand the perimeters of the same ideas.
Person must have thought about it from a different way.
Look at the family. In Death of a Salesman, and the family in Erasing in the Sun, or the family in Fences, which is one of the texts we're doing. In Fences, you have Ruth and Troy.
Yes. You are trying to
They've lived a very peaceful life for 18 years. They've had a kid.
expand the perimeter.
Troy works, Ruth stays at home. Ruth does everything to keep the family together,
And the family in Erasing
to
in the
cook
Sun.
for the husband
Or the
and her
family
friend
in
and stepson, Lions,
We're doing.
and even the brother-in-law, Gabriel,
In Francis, you have Ruth.
while Troy goes out to work. He brings in the money.
A very peaceful
And
life
there's
for 18
absolute unity here when he hands over the money to the wife to control. Then he takes out only his pocket money for his bill.
Ruth does everything to keep the family together.
But soon we realize that he has been seeing a girl, Alberta,
And her
and
friend.
gets this girl pregnant.
Steps
And that shatters the family.
we're doing.
Shatters the
even the
family.
brother-in-law
But
Gabriel.
it brings into Ruth's life again a
While
child.
Troy goes out to work. He brings in
No,
the
no.
money. A very peaceful
And Ruth says, okay, Troy, you have lost a wife, but I've gone and got a girl. I've always loved the girl. You see, the family becomes shattered as a result of the infidelity of the husband. But again, we find a situation here when Troy tries to justify why. I just wanted something new. I wanted to see the life out there, to experience the life out there what it is. I've stood in one place for 18 years. And Ruth says, but I've been there all the time with you. And I gave you everything you needed. Why did you have to go back? The whys of family breakups. Then we see Corey who wants to go into athletics. The father discourages him and disappoints him by sending away all the recruiters, and he ends up going into the I think the Navy. All the time with you. Or was it Marines? I said, yeah, to the Marines. As a way out to improve himself. The whys of family breakup. Expanding the ideas, the perimeters of seeing things. Could we say Troy's concept of the American dream was slightly different? He couldn't see the son achieving anything through athletics, something he said he had tried but failed. At this time, remember again, this is a new generation. And we can look at so many families that have made life worth living through athletics. Expanding the ideas, the perimeters of seeing. So we have generation conflicts. Just like in that of salesman, generation conflict, because Willie Loman believes that his two sons, Beef and Happy, will make it. But Beef says, I know myself, I can do it. Something he said he had tried, but I don't like the rat race competition of the city. I tried, but I failed. I went out there to try, but I ended up in jail all the time. That's a pipe dream. I think I can make it more with my hands in the open field than in the city. That's a new generation. They're no longer salesmen. They're stores now. Department stores where Happy works. But for Happy to make the money and to come at that number one, which is the American dream here, I tried, but I failed. He has to be the leader. He has to be the boss. But he's about 3 spaces behind the boss. That's a pipe dream. It's one of those pipe dreams. You can't make it just that way. You can't make it that way. That's a new generation. And Charlie, they're no longer salesmen. They're stores now. Willie Loman's friend tells Willie Loman, you're a businessman, yet you don't know that what is important in life is what you sell. Not whether people like you or love you or not. Whether you name somebody Howard or not. Does that set food on the table? So the American dream is not just having that money, it's setting food on the table, having an insurance, paying your insurance premium, having a good car, a good family, and living comfortably. Not necessarily being very rich. To some, it would be being very wealthy. Others, it's just what? Living comfortably well. Whether you name somebody Howard or not. Does that set food on the table? So the American dream is not just having. So the research text specifies from your reading an attraction to an idea or theme or author. As we read, remember we saw the African American and living comfortably. That's Gwendolyn Brooks. Then we saw. We talked about Claude McKay. We also talked about Canty Collins and Lansing Hughes. You may be interested in the whole concept of freedom. So the research text specifies or race in American writing. In the short stories that we read, remember we saw the African American everyday use. That's Gwendolyn Brooks. Or growth, A&P. We talked about Claude McKay. We also talked about Canty Collins. And after you've gotten the idea. Since I'm encouraging you guys to write on the American dream, then get to the computer for more ideas and information about the topic. What's this thing? I've heard about it. What's this thing called the American dream? American dream. And by the way, how am I supposed to growth to go about it? We talked about Claude McKay. The answer to going about it is look for a research paper.
got
There's
the
every
ideas.
textbook. At the end of this lecture, I've given you a list of textbooks. Every textbook on English has a chapter or
more ideas and information
a sub-chapter on a research paper.
What's the
They
state
usually
called?
present a couple of research papers for you to see what is required, how to organize your paper, where to integrate your ideas, how to avoid plagiarism, how to document, look for internal citations,
Every textbook at the
endnotes.
I've given you a list.
We no longer use
Every
footnotes.
textbook
Endnotes has a chapter or
more ideas and information
a sub-chapter,
on
works cited
every
page.
research paper.
We don't use references.
shall present
References
a couple
is
of
for
research
APA, that's American
for you to see
Psychological
what
Association.
required.
But with the American language, the Modern Language
avoid
Association of
plagiarism.
America, the MLA, which is what we're going to use,
How to document.
we make references to
internal
works cited.
citations. Every textbook.
Works cited here is different from a bibliography. We're going to talk a little more about it. That's dealing with works that you have actually used, you've actually cited, not what you read. Because when we deal with just works you read, we can include those in what we call a general bibliography or a working bibliography. And after that, what you have cited is what is referenced as a works cited page. Then next, you go to the library for collection of sources. This American Dream. How do I go about typing American Dream and literature? You can just type American Dream and literature. You know, the internet has made it so easy for us. It will give you a plethora of texts and articles that have been written on American Dream in literature or in history. Remember again, we're dealing with a topic which is very broad. You're going to see them in newspapers, textbooks, magazines, critical materials needed, especially critical materials. We're much more interested in critical materials than just those magazines or newspapers. Okay. It will give you a plethora of texts and articles that have been written. So even I say, all right, they are rushing to the library. Remember again, you cannot use the library until you know what they're looking for. You're going to see them in newspapers, textbooks, just like the example of picking somebody from the airport. You can't pick the person until there's some kind of clue, description of what the person looks like, so that you know whom you are looking for. And as soon as you go to the library, collect all the text books or sources you need, and all of them put together on that same topic will constitute what we call a bibliography. That's a collection of works, just like the example of picking that deal with, mention, or are about the topic you are interested in. You definitely not use all of them, but at that point they constitute what we call a bibliography. And as soon as you go to the library, and the first thing you want to do is skim through all of it and select what best contains what you will need. Remember the will need. On that same topic, I said, all right, I have 20 books. Out of these 20 books, I think 8 of them or 10 of them are very central, are very germane to me. So I'm going to use this 10. Those 10 constitute what we call a working bibliography, because that's what you're going to work with, a working bibliography. Very, very important. The bibliography is the general collection of the text on your topic, but a working bibliography is just a collection of the books that you have selected to use as your references. 8 of them. These are the ones you are going to check out of the library and to put it in a safe place and to use consistently as you write your paper. But remember again, though I say use consistently as you write your paper, I may retract from that a little bit to say as you do your research, because you are supposed to use your notecards to extrapolate material ideas from these books that you are going to use in your writing. These are the ones by the time you are writing, in fact, no textbook should be by you. It's only index cards or note cards or books with notes. Remember again, that should be your working material at this time. But you will need them still handy, because sometimes you make an error on your note card, you want to go back to the original source. Make sure you take down all the necessary reference information before you start work on each. By the time you are writing, because we always have this tendency of saying, I'm coming back to it, now I'm coming back to it. Suddenly you forget and you run out. So, oh, you have an appointment, or you have a class, you run to class. Before you come back to the librarian,
But you need them still.
I've collected the books and fired them up.
You want to go back to
You have the information, but you forgot where you got
Make
it.
sure you take down all the necessary.
So the first thing is, once you identify that it has something you need, put down the call numbers, put down the publication information, the author, place of title of the book, place of publication, and publishers. Do that immediately.
You run to class.
That's going to help you a lot
Back to the librarian.
in
But you
future.
need them still.
I've collected the books and fired them up. Then after you've identified the textbooks you are going to use, or the references, the critical books you are going to use,
that it has something you need, put down.
you have to read each of them
Put down the
with a pen and a paper to
author,
take notes concerning your topic.
place of title of the book, place of publication. and
Because you are going to comment on that source. That's annotating. Remember annotating. If it's the text is yours, remember, don't do that inside a library book. Except your photocopied pages, and you're doing that on the pages that you have photocopied. You can annotate those pages. Remember, if you have photocopied that, you can write on the edges, by the side, the margins. It's or chapter 1 or paragraph 1 or conclusion, depending upon the content of that section you are reading. At this point, if you have made up your mind about the topic, you should know what definitely is going to come first. This article tends to define the American dream, so it has to be where in the introduction. This one gives me examples of the introduction. It should be either chapter 1 or chapter 2. If that example is about houses or about houses, okay, let me put houses as chapter 1. At this point, any other text you read and you come across that deals with houses as part of the American dream, you put that chapter 1. So that in the end, you can see so many chapter 1s in different writings, either note cards or the documents you photocopy. Then you pull that together, and now you have already created a chapter 1 or a paragraph 1 that deals with housing. And if it's too long, you can create what we call a paragraph block, which is a series of paragraphs dealing with one huge topic. So in the end, you can see so many chapter 1s in different writings, either note cards or... And each note item should reference the pages or the page of the specific text from where it or they came. And remember, again, those pages are very important because in their documentation, in their references, especially internet citation, we are going to use those references. We are going to tell the reader where those ideas or that particular quotation came from. That's why you need page numbers. And in most cases, I always prefer to use like a red pen or something. Remember, you are commenting on the relevance of the source to your project. How relevant is this source to your project? Because at this time of annotation, you are simply looking at what you need. You may not go into a lot of details about the reading, but you are just interested in what each source has, what each book has. And in most cases, I always prefer if you are like me, sometimes I don't have the patience to come back. You may just sit there and finish reading. Otherwise, the first thing you want to do is to comment on this. This text, this book has 25 chapters on page this. I see information that is relevant to the family on page this. On page. This book is essential to my research. That is what is called annotation. Writing in the margins there to indicate what is in the paper itself or what is in the chapter you're looking at. The first thing you want to do is to... And more importantly, this is very useful when you use index cards, especially the bigger one, 5x8, for easy access. Because you can manage them, you can rearrange them. And remember, even as you use them, make sure you handle them well, because they can be so confusing when you don't handle them well. Indicate what is in the paper itself, or what is in the chapter. Each index card should contain the source of the information. I don't want to say sources here, but because I just want you to use one index card for one author. Write the name of the author's full name, the title of the book or the source, place of publication, and publishers and date of publication. And preferably in red or a different color. Because you want to count that as source number 1 or number 2, and you want it to stand out to attract you. So I usually use red. I'm telling you this from practical experience because I've published a lot, and each time I go to publish, it's just like beginning afresh. Except that I already have information about how to go about it. I already have the knowledge of the methodology. But as I go through the same process using different colors of ink to identify my sources or my pages. Provide specific pages from which critical information has been extrapolated. Where did you get it? Page 25, pages 6 to 10. Index information or whatnot. Number your index cards. These index cards are on Arthur Miller, Death of a Salesman. Miller, page 1. Miller, page 2. Miller, page 3. It's not page 3 of the book itself, but of the card. You remember? So that your material should not be distorted. So as soon as you finish with that book, you go to the next one. You write the author's name, the critic's name, and the author, the name of the book itself, the critical source, and you start with page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. Some may have half a page, some may be 5 pages, some may just be 1 page. Remember, it is the relevance and the strength of the material found in those pages. As soon as you finish with that book, you go to the next one. And in that chapter or paragraph, that lets you quote extensively. Because for some, you are going to quote directly. And remember, by direct quotation here, you have to use quotation marks. It's the quoted material must be exactly like it appears in the primary source, which may take a little more. Or you have to paraphrase, which may be a whole chapter, or you just have to mention, because you got the ideas from that textbook, the mention of that idea must be acknowledged to the textbook. Or you just quote the sections of the textbook, which will be what we call the incorporated quotation or informal quotation to complete your sentence. But remember, no matter how you quote, you must maintain the flow of the ideas, the sentence structure, from before you quote to when you quote. If it's an informal quotation or incorporated quotation, the structure, the syntax of the sentence must be such as to create a complete sentence without breaking the flow or the grammatical arrangement of the words. No matter how you quote, and sometimes you may even use square brackets to change a tense or a word there so that it rhymes with the tenses you have been using or with the time frame you have been using. We're going to go into those details. The structure, the syntax of the and we don't need to use any of those index cards to realize that we have stronger material, because sometimes you have to make a choice between one source or another. Yeah, they're saying about exactly the same thing, but they're saying it differently. One has a more powerful language, and therefore more detailed. You want to go for that, but or one has overflown language, and your level of writing is not that high. You don't want to quote something, because sometimes you have or an author whose language is far beyond yours, because otherwise they will create what we call purple patches. But you want to make sure you evaluate the language to make the language rhyme with yours. I'm not saying you can't take the challenges, but at the same time, I'm saying just be careful not to make the language sharp. Then before the reader drops down to your level. Make it equal to your level. And that's why if the language is too good or too refined, instead of quoting directly, you may paraphrase. Remember, to paraphrase is to say the same thing, but in your own words. In different words and in your own words. Or you may summarize it. But whether you paraphrase, summarize, make references to, or quote directly, you have to acknowledge that source. Otherwise, you'll be guilty of plagiarism. Plagiarism, remember, is taking somebody's ideas and presenting as if they were yours. We don't want to do that. This is part of academic dishonesty, and you can lose your place in the college or in the university. It's a serious offense. But whether you paraphrase, and if you're sure of your paragraphs already, create paragraph headings for each unit of the index cards. You'll be guilty of plagiarism. Create them because you have already rearranged the information according to sameness of ideas to form chapters or paragraphs. I'm sorry, chapters or paragraphs. Remember, chapters or paragraphs. For us, we'll be dealing more with paragraphs. And if you already know, okay, we have identified the American dream as dealing with the family, and then dealing with economic activities, then dealing with characterization. So each one will constitute a paragraph or a paragraph block. So as you find yourself getting more and more materials on the family, or getting more and more materials on economics, or more materials on the acquisition of landed property, each of them will fall within that group, and then that creates a caveat, that creates a category for itself, and then you can rearrange those index cards within those categories by indicating by the side where they go. Is it an introduction? Is it paragraph 1? Is it paragraph 2? Is it a conclusion? You have to do that. And that's why index cards are so handy, because you can use them very effectively, rearrange them without much of a problem. Then that creates a caveat, that creates a category for itself, and then you can rearrange those index cards within those categories by indicating by the side where they go. Is it an introduction? Is it paragraph 1? Is it paragraph 2? Is it a conclusion? You have to do that. So when we talk of sources here, there are two types of sources. Because you can use them. There's what we call the primary source, which is the textbook. Remember, this is a literature-based writing class. There's a textbook, there's the novel, the short story that we've just read, the essay, or the play. Anything you are writing about or writing on is what we call the primary source. Ask you, what's your primary source? What are you writing on? Sources here, there are two types. It is not the topic, remember? It is the book from which you have gotten the material to write about. Because writing about literature, or in literature, critical writing is about writing on things that people have published. What has been published therefore becomes what we call the primary source. You read the primary source, you come out with certain ideas, and you want to examine these ideas in that primary source, how the author has gone about, or how you discern, how you discovered, and how you understood the idea. How the author puts the characters together to exemplify that idea. That's what we call the primary source. This source is not counted as the number of references you have used. No. If I say, give me 5 references, and you have used 2 books, those 2 books are not part of the 5 references. No. But they will be part of the references. They will be on the reference page, but they will not constitute the new references I'm asking for. Put the characters together to exemplify that idea. Because what you are doing is you are looking at the primary sources and making continuous references to these primary sources as a focus of your paper. Remember, your paper has a theme, but it's focused on those papers, analyzing those papers, synthesizing the ideas. Or extrapolating from that paper and talking about it and showing a broader significance of that theme. You say, yeah, that is in literature, but again, in sociology, we have it, in history, we have it, something. What you are doing is some other references too. Then we have what we call secondary sources. These are sources that have been discussed, talked about, or made references to. Analyzing those papers, synthesizing the ideas. Excuse me, these are sources that have discussed, talked about, or made references to. You have primary sources.
In literature, but again,
Critical texts, articles, critical essays, collection of essays on your author, or the primary text, or Death of a Salesman, or Langston Hughes, or Gwendolyn Brooks, or any other person. Those books that have talked about them, they constitute what we call the secondary sources.
Excuse me, these are sources that have discussed
And normally, this is the way, the role they play here. They create a background or foundation for your essay.
articles, critical essays, collection of essays.
And sometimes for a literary essay, you may even go beyond a literary text or beyond history, to create a solid foundation. For instance, take the American Dream. It is historical.
Those books that have
We look at Abraham Lincoln and other things, and if you were to Google it, it was a historical word.
This is the way
The American Dream. What was it? Who created it? Who started it? When did it become popular? This is very important.
and sometimes
And how has it varied?
even go beyond.
And what are the variations of the American Dream? American Dream to the black is not the same like the American Dream to the rich.
Solid foundation.
Although they may be looking for the same thing for progress. For some, it's just being happy. For some mothers, this is, it's just getting that diploma. I've attained it. I'm happy about it. I'm happy with it.
Who started it? When did it become popular?
For some, it's about being
And sometimes
wealthy.
has it varied? Even go beyond.
Excuse my
And
word,
what are the
filthy rich?
variations of the American
Yeah.
Dream? American Dream.
I've attained the American Dream.
Like the American Dream to the rich. Solid foundation.
Although they may be looking for the same thing. It may be politics. It may be economics.
It's just being happy.
So you have to be broad-minded to see how you can create a formula, a background to this American dream.
When did it become popular? For some, it's bad.
Some important textbooks that you find useful here are Green, Stuart Green. And look at my entry very well. This is the MLA style. This is the MLA style, and you're going to find this. So you have to be broad-minded to see how you can create a formula, a background to this American dream.
For some, it's bad.
Some important textbooks that you find useful here are Green, Stuart Green. And look at my entry very well. This is the MLS style. You look on the left, that we have hanging indentations. Those points there, remember the black points, were not created by me. Anyway, I just wanted to have those as reference items. But normally, you do not have anything. You don't number 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, D, or put the points there, the bullet points there. But again, these are arranged how? Alphabetically. Look at it. Beginning with the last name of the first author. If there are two authors, remember, it is the name of the first of the two, or if there are 15, is the name of that the first of the 15 that determines where that reference falls. So the real name of this guy is Stuart Green, and the other one is April Landisky. So you reverse, look at it, the name of the first person, Green, comma, the first author, Stuart. If there are two authors, remember, and you see, and you actually write and, A-N-D, and if there are 15, April, you don't reverse the name of the second person or the third or fourth or fifth. You reverse only the name of the first person. So the real name of this guy is Stuart, period. And the title of the work is From Inquiry to Academic Writing. I think this first person. Green, comma, spacing here. It's just, I mean, I should put this in and begin to see. And you actually write see what I'm talking about. And see them becoming mutilated as a result. All right. You reverse only the name of the first person. So the real name of this guy is Stuart, period. And the title of the work is From Inquiry to Academic Writing. I think this first person. Now, the more you play with it, the more you tend to lose it. But the key thing here is to make sure you arrange this alphabetically. Do your hanging indentation. After after the name of the author or the authors, you have that for the title of the book itself. The complete title, remember, it is not inquiry to academic writing. It's have a text and a reader. Those are part of the academic title of the book.
Do your hanging indentation.
Oh boy. After the name of the author or the authors, you have that for the title of the book itself. The complete title. Okay, you know what I mean. So you find this, but when you're typing the paper, you don't run into this problem. I see. Okay. You see hanging indentation here. You have a textbook and a reader. You have the edition, place of publication, Boston, the publishers Bedford St. Martin, the year of publication 2015, then period, then print. Print is a new version or addition to the MLA style because they want to distinguish upfront whether it was it's being printed or it's an interview. If it was an interview, you write an interview. If a survey, you write a survey. If it's CD-ROM, you have CD-ROM there. If it's a radio broadcast or whatever, you write radio broadcast. So this is print. The next one after G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, L becomes the next letter. James D. Lester Sr. and James D. Lester Jr. This is a strange case where somebody on the Sun decided to write this book. The title is Writing Research Paper, 11th edition. Writing Research Paper. The next one after G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, L becomes the next letter. James D. The 11th edition here. And James D. Lester Jr. This is a strange case where published in New York, somebody on the Sun decided to write this book, and the publishers were Pearson and Longman, and this was done in 2005. Remember with the MLA, the date is almost the last thing to appear, unlike with the APA, where the date follows the title of the author of the book. But here, this is about the last thing to appear, and then print. Then after that, there's a very important book. Please, I want you to note this, highlight this. Very, very important. The MLA, Modern Letters Association, is the MLA handbook for writers of research papers. Excuse me. Error here. Writers of research papers. And you know, but just recently I've been writing a lot of papers using the APA style. That's why you may occasionally find me commit these errors. Remember with the MLM, every major lexical item, like handbook, writers, research, paper, should always be capitalized. The P here capitalized, the R here capitalized, the W here capitalized, the H here capitalized. That is just for the MLA. You find the same thing with writing, research, and paper here. The same thing from, inquiry, to. But to, again, which is this preposition should never be capitalized. Within, from, to, academic with A here capitalized and writing capitalized. Then you have the last, not the last one, capitalized. You have souls here, and the essence of you find the same thing again. You have to make sure you put the title in italics, please. Make sure you put the title in italics. But if you're in the library or on your notepad, what you want to do is to underline them. But no, except you can write in italics, but I'm not sure you have to underline them. We used to underline them, but because we word process our papers, we ask you to use italics. I say the essentials of academic writing, second edition. Where was it published? In Boston. By who were the publishers? Wadsworth, St. Gage Learning. Comma year of publication, 2010. It's a book, a sprint.
we used to underline them, but because
The next one,
word processor papers, we
Brenda Spat.
italics. I said the
But with the resin name as Spat,
second edition,
Brenda,
where we
period,
incorporate
Spat, comma,
Boston,
Brenda, period, by
even the library,
writing from sources,
Wadsworth,
period,
St. Gage,
F
Brand,
edition,
comma, year of publication,
period, New York,
2010. It's a book.
Um,
You have to underline them.
colon here, Bedford,
Used to underline them, but because
St. Martin's,
processor papers,
these are the publishers, comma, 2011,
but with
period, Prince, period. Remember, each punctuation mark here is very essential. Don't tell me, oh, that's the end of the sentence, oh, that's the end. I shouldn't put a period here. A period is counted. When we do give points for annotated bibliography or some kind of
colon here,
bibliography, we count every one of them. The comma has its own rule here. The period has its own rule. The colon has its own rule.
remember, each punctuation mark here is very essential.
The final period, I mean, each of them is very important, so you have to take note of each of the punctuation marks. Because each punctuation mark indicates something. It indicates the end of a unit, something. You have the author's unit is different from the title's unit, different from place of publication and the publishers. So take note and use this, especially if you have the MLA. You go to any library and type the MLA or on your computer,
Each of them is
laptop. Just type the MLA. It tells you how to organize your paper, how to document your paper, how to use internal citations, how to come up with
use this, especially if you have the
works cited list,
library.
and how works cited list is different from a selected bibliography or from the annotated bibliography.
It tells you how to.
So as you read now, I think we just done with
use internal citations.
the plays. How to as you Adam read this, as you think about what you want to write about,
Especially if you have the
works cited list, think of first going to the library or Google a research paper. Just read a little bit about it
from the annotated bibliography.
because in the 7 steps to writing a research paper, the authors say one of the first things you want to do is to look at a research paper, read it. Just like I advise you with the essay, let the essay look like an essay. We may have a problem with it reading like an essay, but let it look like an essay. In other words, with the title and the paragraphs well and clearly designated paragraphs, without skipping an extra line, but with just using what? Simple indentation. Paragraphs are indicated by a simple indentation, not skipping lines. So the essay has to look like one. It's when I get into the reading that the paragraphs should read like one. But hear my words. Look like one, read like one. Read like one, meaning each paragraph should be united by a single point, should be built on a single point. A single point which is a fragment of the hypothesis, the big point. There's the big point, which is the theme. And what you get into with the theme, what you do with the theme, is to fragment it into several units. How do I approach this theme, but still the same thing? So, for instance, the American dream, meaning black and white, relative to what? The American dream. Death of a salesman, a single point, everyday use, and Langston Hughes, V-Day. This is part of what? The American dream.
How do I approach this theme?
When he complains, he went out there to fight for liberty and freedom, but he has come back still to a segregated, to a Jim Crow society.
Relative to what? The American
Will the D-Day be my D-Day, his own D-Day? Will the Victory Day be his own Victory Day?
And
Can he be given that opportunity to pursue his happiness, equality, and every other thing he fought for? How does that become a subtle comment on
out there to fight for liberty.
the American dream.
But he has come back.
Because the dream of going to fight for that war was what? Freedom. Which is a starting point for most African Americans. The freedom to be themselves. The freedom to do the things they want to do in order to move forward. The freedom, like in Erasing in the song, where Walter meets Bobo and Harris to discuss about business. But the easiest freedom they have is going into liquor selling, which is a starting point for most in order to make fast money. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. The freedom to do the things they want to do in order to move forward. And especially when he tells us, sometimes at night, I see my future laid right in front of me. I can almost reach it and touch it and hold it. I can hold it. I can touch it. Harris. That's what I have my American dream. He tells us of his wife. Who tells you my wife cannot wear pearls? Good jewelry. That I cannot buy a Cadillac convertible for me and my and my wife. A good Lincoln car for my wife. And to send my son right in front of me to the best school. I must reach it and touch it and hold it. I can hold it. He has a right to do that. That's what, and he believes he can do that, but he's handicapped because the economic situation, the political situation never made it possible for him to have the prerequisites or the what it was required to move ahead, which was education. He ends up as a chauffeur. And to send my son. Then he tells us all he does is he drives this man to work. He has a right. Sits out there brushing the car, wiping the car, and by evening he takes him back. It's a drudgery. He's bored. And as he drives past, he sees all the small young white boys talking about business, and turning millions upon millions. And he says, why can't I be like one of them? Why can't I be like one of them? All he does is he drives this man to work. Sits out there, and he cannot be like one of them because of just basic qualifications which we are trying to give to the students through education. He wasn't educated. We're not saying education is the only way to attain the American dream, but we're saying it helps in the attainment of the American dream. Why can't I be like one of them? Because had he gone to school, had he that the certificates or the qualifications needed, probably he wouldn't just be a chauffeur, but he will be working in an office. He will be doing something to attain that American dream, especially when the play was written in the 1950s. We're not saying education in the 1960s. With any education, every black man having that education would have moved ahead. Because had he gone to school, had he that the certificate, so then that frustrates his American dream. Probably he wouldn't just be a chauffeur. That's American dream. But he in the Great Gatsby, was he this rich, spoiled kid to attend that American dream? Who went into the army? He was poor. By the time he came back and got settled somewhere in the West and finally found himself in New York, he was rich. Nobody knows the source of his money. Moved ahead. They tried to figure it out. Because had he gone to school, but nobody can truly figure out. The narrator becomes a friend of his. But he can't help him become to enjoy that dream. Because Gatsby, Jay Gatsby had thought for a long time that his wife Daisy, his girlfriend, former girlfriend, was going to wait for him. And the girlfriend said, "You went away. I couldn't just suspend my life waiting for you. I had to move ahead with my life." But he believes that she should have waited for him, and that she can recapture the past. She can remake the money. The past through money. But it doesn't work because Gatsby, it's not about using your money to remake the past. It doesn't quite work. He throws all those parties, but those parties don't bring him peace. And he wears those flowery and flamboyant attires and drives one of the best cars. But they don't give him peace whatsoever. There's an emptiness in it. And again, one of the plays written by Edward Albee called The American Dream depicts exactly a character like this, who is all muscles, good looking, well cut, like a cowboy. It's called the American Dream, but underneath all of that, he is rotten, maggots. He has no soul. The American Dream.
One of the plays written by...
Did Albee mean that American Dream was rotten, deceptive? Not necessarily.
A character like this.
He was creating an atmosphere where the outside must be matched by the inside, the substance, the foundation.
It's called the American Dream.
Or J. Gatsby's money should have been be matched by his morality, his well-being. Because the true the true American dream would be complete and whole.
Was rotten, deceptive,
Not like Albee's all muscles, but rotten inside American dream.
where the outside must be matched by the inside.
So as we impact on this, I want you therefore to use the works that we have done. But you have the choice whatsoever to go beyond these works. But I do not just want you to write on anything outside literature. Select a theme, a topic. Send me an email with your topics. I have to identify them. I have to acknowledge them. Then we continue from there and move forward. Again, it's my pleasure to be with you.
The works that we have done.
And I'll cut it off here and wait for your questions.
But I do not just want
Please
you to
feel free
on anything
to write to me. But what I've presented is just a microscopic minority of what research is about.
with your topic.
But remember, I'm trying to give you a head start on what you're supposed to do. But between now and tomorrow, first, look for a research paper and read it. Just read it. Whether you understand what they're saying there or not, but just read it. One that has been written and published, not your friends on, but a paper that has been published in a text. It will give you a better clue as to what is required.
Remember, I'm trying to give you a head start on what you're supposed to do. But
Because first of all, we've been advised very clearly that before you even back on
whether you understand
the
what they're
research
saying
process,
there or not, but just
you
read it.
first have to
One
look
that has been
at the
written
paper. Look at the
published.
paper.
Not your friends on,
Look at the paper.
but a paper that has been published in a text.
In the 7 steps I had mentioned earlier to research writing, I may not remember them coherently, but one of the steps from the very beginning is know your topic. Know what they're asking for. Know the limits and the limitations of the paper. We're asking for an 8-page paper, excluding the cover sheet and references. We're talking about 8, but although sometimes I can get down to 6, depending upon how well your paper is structured.
One of the steps from the very beginning.
Because in this class, I think I'm not very as particular about depth here than just the fact that you know the process, you know how to go about it. Because as you progress in your education, you find yourself using more and more of these research strategies. And before you notice it, you'll be writing 20-something pages. In fact, the last paper I published was 24 pages. But it's just a paper. Although my students look at the whole thing and say, "Man, that's too long." No, but so long as you can, you have the ideas in you and you know what you're talking about. The beauty of the whole thing is that the ideas just start flowing. It's on that piece of paper.
And before you notice it, you'll be writing.
You have to use the MLS style.
Something pages. In fact, the last paper I published was 24
Type it
pages.
in the New Times Roman.
Although my
12
students
font.
look at the whole thing and say, "Man, that's too long." No, but so long as
You can use Arial, but the point is with the Arial is that you may be the only lone one using that, because most students would prefer the Times New Roman. Double space, remember? Although we're talking about 6 pages, we're talking about double space. So you're talking about 3 or 4 single space, then when you double space, it gives you, a little more. But what we require. And start the research process right away. Do it right now. Another step is look at the research paper, See the formatting?
double space, remember? Although we're talking about 6 pages.
See how the APA, the MLA is used?
Yeah, talking about 3 or 4 single space. Then when you double space, it gives you
Get the first draft,
a little more.
revise it over and over, because remember I told you the research writing is a
The
process
research process right away.
from the beginning to the second or third revision. And just shoot me something, the first paragraph or two. Let me see where you're going.
Although we're talking about 6 pages.
And remember again, you cannot afford to be late. This is a very fast-paced semester, and I expect you to turn your papers on time,
Because remember, I told you.
so that I will be able to finish grading and turn in the grades on time for the second summer to begin, because there are some students who will be both in the first and second summers.
Let me see where you're going.
Okay. Time limit. When do I need this paper? Because for every research paper, you have to know the time.
This is a very fast-paced.
That's the last week of this month.
Papers on time.
Oh, I don't have my watch.
I will be able to finish grading and turn in the grades on time for the second summer
And that should be around.
students who will be both in the first and second summers. Let me see where you're going.
Okay. Time limit.
When do I
That
need
should
this
be
paper?
around.
Every research paper, you have to know the time. This is a very fast-paced.
June 26th, I should have the papers. June 26th, Tuesday, June 26th. Please, I want the papers. But if you finish before time, that's fine. Otherwise, June 26th. Send me a hard copy. If you want to bring it to my office, you can bring it. But make sure, please, and since this is a very crucial paper, I'm going to document anything you send to me. I always acknowledge receipt of the paper. Please make sure you use my right email address, which is the Ngwang, not the Ngwang Emmanuel. It's Emmanuel Ngwang. That's my official email address, and the papers will definitely reach me. Okay.
But
All
make
right.
sure, please, and since this is a very crucial paper,
Um,
I'm going to document.
Going back a little bit now
I always
to
acknowledge
what we've been doing.
Please make sure you use the
I had assigned Erasing in the Sun as a reading text.
It's Emmanuel.
That text, I mean, you can order the movie online and fences and watch the movie, but I still advise you to read the text because I uploaded them, the text, both Erasing in the Sun and fences. There's a difference when you read the text proper and when you watch the movie.
I had assigned
The difference comes from what we call actability. Is it actable? There are certain things that cannot be acted in a movie,
and fences,
and there are certain things
but I still advise you to read the
that
text.
I extrapolated from the text itself, the script, and changed this in order to make sense
There's a difference when you
in
read
terms of that actability,
proper.
and also to create some kind of humor, because everything else, if it was going to be one-to-one correspondence, the entertainment value would be almost be
There are
lost.
certain things that cannot be acted.
So the dramatist
And there are certain things
or the filmmaker has that liberty, that leeway to modify a few things,
the script
even with age and other things, to make it more exciting, to make it much more
in
realistic.
terms of that actability.
Because you can't just stage everything.
Everything else, if it was going to be one-to-one,
That's in play.
the entertainment value.
Again, as you read
certain things that
Erasing in the Sun,
so the
remember
dramatist,
the title Erasing in the Sun was taken from
filmmaker has that liberty.
Lance's Hughes poem called Harlem.
Modify a few things.
So what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry like a Erasing in the Sun?
To make it more exciting, to make
So
it
that's the
more
question.
realistic. In terms of that
What happens to your American dream that has been deferred? To defer something means to postpone. It's not to destroy it, but to postpone. Somebody promises you something and keeps on postponing.
was taken
What happens to it? Do you let it go? Do you hang on to it? Does it become like a sore and run and just bothers you every day? You wake up every day, you think about it?
what happens to your American
Or does
dream
it just get heavy and sad and sing?
to postpone.
to the bottom of the sea,
It's not to
or
destroy
does it
but
explode?
postpone.
Does somebody
Initiate
promise to do
or
something, keep
does
on
it push you
postponing,
to go out there and fight for it?
What happens to it?
Remember, it was just
let
let
it
it
go.
go.
But you have a right to that dream. What happens to the dream defined?
Become like a sore and run and just bothers you
That
every day.
poem is not about the American dream, but simply about what happens to our unfulfilled dream.
To the bottom of the sea. It's not to destroy.
There are a series of questions, remember? Langston Hughes is not giving us answers to those questions, but he's raising those questions, giving us variations or different approaches to the American dream. What happens to the dream defined? So as you read that poem, you can't, you have to come up with your own individual answers. Remember, the poem ends always in a question. It's a question. These are not statements. It's not like the other poem called Dream, where he says, dreams are things you hang onto, things you hold. There are wings that you need to fly, and without dreams you cannot fly. Without dreams you have no hope. But again, if you fly too high, the sun will melt your wings. Or if you are too heavy, the weight will pull you down. So it's very, very important to look at these demarcations, these distinctions, and to see the variation of dreams. And one of you may be interested in looking at what the variation of dreams. One dream meaning dream proper, the other one meaning just if you fly too high. Promises to keep miles to go before you. 3 promises to keep miles to go. These are dreams. So we had stopping by the woods on a snowy evening, and to see the variation of dreams. Miles to go before I sleep. Promises are kept. Things to do. One dream meaning. So that's part of the American dream. All right. Promises to keep miles to go before you. So in that play, whom do we have here? You have the main character here. Unlike in those old traditional plays, modern drama does not quite identify a central character as the main character. Things to do. Because it's a collectivity here where all the characters combine, come together to address an issue or a theme. So in that play, like in Death of a Salesman, although Willie Loman is the salesman, the main character here, but Charlie is as important as Willie Loman, just like Beef and Happy, because these characters are there from the beginning to the end. In classical drama or tragedy, most of the characters were hardly ever there. They will come play a part and go away. They were what we call the flat characters. They can play a unique part and go away and disappear. But in a modern drama, you have a whole trend, a whole group of people, a trend of people moving the theme from the very beginning to the end. Just like Beef and Happy. We have Walter with the mother, Lena, Big Mommy, and his wife Ruth, his son Travis, his sister Benita. It is that play. That play is not just Walter's play, it is that play. And each of them has a dream. And how do they contribute to realizing that dream or to impede that dream? Mama's religion stands in the way somehow with the mother, because she doesn't want her money, her husband's money, the insurance money, to be used on starting a bar. Alcoholism is not quite welcome into most Christian families somehow. And we may want to ask the question, is that why that attempt to start the bar fails? Mama's religion stands in the way, and Walter insists, because she doesn't want her money, to Benita, that in her house, God still exists. Alcoholism is a very strange phenomenon. They don't wear religion on their sleeves, but there's an undercurrent of that religious dispensation. There's that undercurrent we find there. And we hear Mama always referring to God when things are bad. And Walter insists, because she doesn't want her money, to Benita, that in her house. Again, we have the broad universal theme of love. which is family love here. Benita's love for the brother's love for her, and Mama's love for Walter. Though Walter has lost the money, he tells Walter tells him, "Mama, you still trust me with this little bit of money?" And the mother says, "I have never stopped loving you." Again, I've never stopped loving you. Broad universal theme of love. What has love got to do with responsibility? Tina Turner, what's love got to do with it? Got to do with it? Who needs a heart when a heart can be broken? Is that the love we're talking about here? Though Walter has lost the money, it tells that goes beyond just a broken heart. You trust me with this little bit of money? Walter is reassured by the mother's consent that, "Look, son, I've always loved you." And when Benita says there's nothing to be loved in Walter, Mama says, "When do you love somebody?" What has love got to do with responsibility? I remember Obama actually raised this point about love too. Who needs a heart when a heart can our love being able to raise the human race, to increase human productivity, to reach out to the less fortunate, to lift them up. By the mother's consent, that is when love is important. And when Benita says there's nothing to be loved, so that in crisis, our strength is not reflected by our running away from troubles, but the ethical positions we take in favor of those who have been affected. The human race to increase, and that's what the mother says. Before you judge somebody, think of the valleys, think of the hills. The hills has climbed, the valleys has climbed out of, the hills has climbed down. Think about that. Think of the experience he's had. Have you cried with him or her? Have you thought about this? The ethical positions we take in favor of those who does it deserve it? Remember, like in that was salesman, Walter is what a human being, and something is happening, and attention must be paid. The hills has climbed. Linda tells her two sons, attention must be paid. We must not allow him go down into his grave like a dog. Attention must be paid. You say he has a character? Or her? A person who drives for over 100 miles to sell things and nobody recognizes him. What happens to such a person? He starts talking to a human being and something's happening. And attention must be paid. And in the end, you find a character like Charlie, who says nobody blames him. Willie Loman was a salesman who wrote on the show shine of other people. He smiled, but when they failed to smile back, there's an earthquake. What happens to nobody blames him. There was an earthquake would have swallowed Willie Loman. And in the it comes with the territory. You find a character but he didn't just know when to jump ship. Nobody blames him. He didn't just know Willie Loman was a salesman. When to stop dreaming. And he continues dreaming. Other people. You see how this place are kind of related, connected. You see that of a salesman, a racing in the sun. Nobody blames him. There was some earthquake. And in Francis, Troy wants the son not to be in the same shape with him. He said, "Hey, I worked for people and it never gave me any reprieve. The best job you can do is to work for yourself. Be a mechanic, go to a professional school, go to a mechanical school, whatever, so that you be your own employee here." But remember, it wasn't that easy for blacks to be their own employers at that time. He said, I could play the baseball so well, but I was never given the opportunity. I was always benched because in those days, members of the Black League had no opportunity. They couldn't make it in the world of sports in those days. But things have changed. Like generational changes. And that's why the mother says, do you think he will be better than you? He will beat you? And Corey even tells the father, "Yeah, you're jealous of me that I will be better than you? That I will succeed where you failed?" That may be true. But we also see that as a responsible father, because that's what he tells Troy, things have changed. I mean, Troy tells Corey that he doesn't do all these things for him because he loves him. He does it because it is what his responsibility. as a father, you provide for them, give them the food, give them the clothes, give them everything that's required.
That may be true.
So here, there's a tricky kind of a dichotomy between love and responsibility. But when love and responsibility coincide to be the operating principle of a person, that's about the best. Otherwise, we find the whole concept of responsibility superseding even love. All right. We've been talking now for almost 1.5 hours. I'll see you tomorrow. You take care. Bye. But when love and responsibility coincide to be the operating principle of a person, that's about the best. Otherwise, we find the whole concept of responsibility superseding even love. All right. We've been talking now for almost 1.5 hours. I'll see you tomorrow. You take care. Bye. But when love